What up, friends? I've taken a critical hit, and today I'm going to be reviewing Madison Beer's debut album, Life Support. Like I said before, this is the debut album by the YouTuber slash TikToker, singer-songwriter, Madison Beer. Ever popular in the scene after being discovered by Justin Bieber years ago, Madison Beer has finally released her debut full-length project after some label changes and some other personal struggles. The record largely deals with said struggles, and even though it's not perfect, I don't think you should write Madison off as just, another influencer dipping their toes into the music scene. Pretty interesting production from a top 40 standpoint, along with honest songwriting, make her stand out in a pretty engaging way. The first actual track, Good and Goodbye, does a pretty good job at encapsulating this album's darker sound. Fairy tale vibes, deep bass, and beats, along with some pretty cold yet powerful vocals, are at the forefront of this track, along with every other song as well. This one kind of sets up that standard going forward. The flow on this one has a confident attitude to it, and the subtle combo of guitar, synth, and samples have a pretty chilling atmosphere. The lyrics on this one are pretty clever as well, expressing how she's getting over her ex, using some pretty interesting and creative wordplay, like putting the over in lover and the ex in next, and also how she's not even trying to find the good in goodbye. With Follow the White Rabbit, this is what I mean by interesting production by top 40 standards. It's like a pop song with an industrial hook. Like, who thinks of this shit? The bells have this ethereal and regal vibe to them, but the heavy synth, guitar, and bass have more sinister energy hiding underneath. There's a lot of build-up to this one, but I really like when that dark, groovy beat kicks in. It almost feels like Madison, or the person she's talking about here, is kind of toying with us. It's such a weird combination of styles, but strangely it fits together pretty well, and it fits the lyrics about trying to follow someone that you're really into, even if it's not going to take you down the best path. Effortlessly, unfortunately, is an example of the album at its more boring moments, though. The fairly standard contemporary R&B and pop vibes are fine, but they kind of pale in comparison to the more interesting production and vibes that make up the other tracks on the record. The lyrics aren't bad and are honest enough, but they're a bit cliche at times, and it doesn't really back up the light piano and guitar all that well. There's no real, power or interesting angles that they're coming from. The beat on Stay Numb and Carry On is pretty sick, almost having like a trip-hop element to it. The simple keys, background vocals, and twinkling effects thrown in here and there have a pretty somber vibe. Madison's flow is also pretty smooth and fits this low-key beat without being too stale or stagnant. I also really like the angle of the lyrics, how it's kind of like a friends to lovers tale, but being in a relationship just brought out the worst in both of them and how they just should have stayed friends. I think it's an interesting, darker aspect of love that, you don't hear about as much. I think it's an interesting thought how just because you can be friends doesn't mean that you're romantically compatible. Now, Blue is a really good ballad. The simple beat and emotive guitar is a very dramatic background to Madison's powerful vocals on this one. It becomes a bit anthemic during the chorus, and I might have preferred a bit more of a powerful touch on said chorus, but it fits the vibe well enough overall. Madison generally gives me Ariana Grande vibes, at least throughout most of this record. However, on this one, I can definitely hear the Lana Del Rey influences, and it's pretty fitting considering the sort of storytelling nature of this track. Being honest, at first I thought this song was about domestic abuse, which I was like, holy shit. But it actually turns out it's more along the lines of appearing like you're doing great and you're having a good time and you're happy on things like social media, when in behind the scenes you're actually hurting and struggling, and you want to keep up appearances because you don't want people to worry about you or think that you're seeking attention. But like, how do you actually be honest with people when you're, have an audience? I think it's an interesting perspective. And I do think it's interesting how the lyrics can be technically applied to multiple situations, if I could gather the first interpretation out of it. So it's open-ended while also applying to very niche topics, which I think is cool. The strings in the opening to Selfish have a pretty unique flair to them, making it stand out among the ballads on the record. It's literally just the previous track, Homesick, but done with a more interesting instrumental. The light guitar pairs with the strings really nicely, and that chorus has a pretty delicate and vulnerable vocal pattern to it. This track in particular really reminds me of Ari, especially in the vocals. It's kind of your standard breakup ballad in terms of lyrics, however it's delivered with a lot of heart, and you can tell that she wanted to add a big emotional punch to this one. Sour Times, on the other hand, is a bit repetitive, unfortunately. It actually retreads a bit of ground from a lyrical standpoint from songs like Stay Numb and Carry On as well, which is kind of unfortunate. I actually like the chorus though, with the muffled beat and the sort of glitchy effects that they put on her vocals, but it's a pretty standard pop flow and one that's just a bit boring. I can respect wanting to try a different structure, but this one wasn't fleshed out enough. It needed a bit more oomph to it. Alright guys, is it wrong that I actually kind of like BOYSHIT? It's a kind of girl power anthem of sorts, but this instrumental is so much fun. It has a weird funky dance groove with some interesting build-up, and I like how noisy it can get at times. Great bassline, fun beat, and some odd samples here and there are a great backdrop to Madison's confident anthem about focusing on her and her own life and not people that can tear it down. Fun flows too, like what more could you really want for a pop song? Like I could totally see someone like Dua Lipa over a track like this. Baby is also a pretty interesting song. A relatively simple intro deceptively hides a pretty interesting dark pop tune. There's definitely some Ari vibes in the vocals here as well, fitting the sexy instrumental and the sort of femme fatale angle that the lyrics are going in. The I'm a handful, but that's what hands are for line is especially good. The synth harp is a good complement to the main beat, adding to that sort of sensual energy, showing that even in heartbreak, Madison really does want someone at the end of the day. Stained Glass is probably my favorite on the record. The vocals on this one are the most emotive by far. Like, she really goes all out on this one. That deep and fuzzy beat, along with the droning sample in the background, capture the heartbroken and elegant imagery in the lyrics. This is especially true when she's comparing her vulnerabilities to stained glass. Using the shattered glass sound effects was a pretty clever and creative touch, and when that guitar comes in, like, goddamn. It's just a powerful track that really feels like Madison coming into her own, especially during the outro. This is a sound that I can definitely see taking her far if she really hones in on it. The last 3 tracks are fine, if a bit less compelling compared to the other songs on the album. In fact, I think that might be the biggest problem on the record overall. It's a bit bloated with intros, intermissions, outros, and the like. It crowds the track list and doesn't let the good songs shine as much as they could have. There's also a bit of retreaded ground here, whether it's similar lyrical topics and styles or instrumentals that just don't really push the envelope, especially during the ballads. However, I do really like the lyrics of "But I still can't find a reason why you'd want to hurt me so bad," and "What in the world did I do to deserve such a pain in my heart from Everything Happens for a Reason." Like, if anything, that song has a really good collection of lyrics to it. Madison has all the capabilities of a good contemporary R&B / singer-songwriter artist. She just needs to hone these skills, maybe get a bit more honest and vulnerable here and there, or elaborate on the lyrics more, and keep the production interesting, like what she did on Stained Glass. She's really pretty close to being there, she just needs to push it a step further. And again, I think she needs to learn how to trim an album more, if you know what I'm saying. Fewer tracks that are more developed almost always trump more songs that sound like they could have been expanded upon. So for her next album, I'm kind of hoping she skips out on the 17-track record and instead opts for maybe a 13-song album that really just fleshes out the sounds completely. Overall though, I'm feeling a decent 7 on Madison Beer's debut album. Of course, we do have to talk about the album cover on the show, and I actually really like this album cover a lot. Her pose is really good. It captures that dark yet sensual side of the record. It has that sort of almost faded look to it That part I don't think fits the record as much, even if it does make for a good album cover, because it's a pretty, poppy and produced album. It's not really on the lo-fi end of things. But overall, it's a really good cover, and I think it's really intriguing. It definitely can get people's attention. But overall, those were my thoughts on the Madison Beer record. Did you guys also agree that this is a pretty good showcase of her talents? Were you kind of hoping for something maybe a little bit more? Let me know. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Ring the bell, and maybe I'll, lay out for you guys, just like how Madison Beer is doing on this album cover. But until the next one, farewell.